Hi guys, in this video I'm just gonna quickly do a simple showcase of a very simple quick start app that demonstrates OrganicMaps Flutter. Basically, OrganicMaps Flutter is an embedded offline map for Flutter apps, so you can embed a map into your own app and that map will work offline without requiring internet connection. So this is an example. These are the supported platforms for now. I'm looking at Wasm for web, but it's not my priority because if you already have access to a browser, you probably have internet connection. But in the cases for Linux, Windows, Mac OS, iOS, and Android, I can see many cases where offline mapping might be relevant. And before I go into more detail, I would really encourage you to download CoMaps. Basically, CoMaps is a fork of OrganicMaps, and there was also Maps.me before. But CoMaps focuses on privacy and a couple more very interesting software, open source software principles that I really vibe with myself. And I highly encourage you to download CoMaps, test it, and maybe it's going to be a useful app to you on your daily use case. What this project does is it just takes that part of CoMaps that renders the map very efficiently and wraps it up as a Flutter widget, which you can use in your own apps. There are maybe some use cases that will, like, at some point drive you to this kind of solution, but I hope this will help you as well. So let's see. Maps for CoMaps typically are coming from MWM files, and this is an example of a mirror of an MWM region maps. So if you go Philippines, for example, so there are like a few maps for different parts of the Philippines regions, and then you can download those. That is linked somewhere in this documentation, I think at the bottom. Let's see here. Okay, map data. So you can just go there, and then you can also create your own server. But for now, that is beyond the topic of this video. You certainly will need a very sizable resource machine to work on generating maps yourself. Perhaps 128 gig of RAM or more, and then a lot of storage, is especially if you're working on the data for the entire world. And that is beyond the scope of this project for now, but I'm also looking into that personally. It's really interesting how it works. Next is there's a concept of releases in the CI/CD, and the latest release is 0112, and we build for iOS, Mac OS, Android, Windows, Linux. And if you go to the releases section of this project, you can download the SDK. At least here, the SDK is what is the most relevant to some of you. And maybe if you want to test right away, the Windows you can easily run, and the Linux, but Mac OS, iOS can be a bit tricky. Android as well. You can run those directly if you know how to. But these are the examples builds. So there is a folder here called example, and this is like showcases version of the use case of the plugin where you can embed a map. If you go here, so as you see, you can embed the map directly, and you can also download. So you can download specific maps during runtime. Of course, if you download, you'll need internet connection. But it shows pre-bundling of map files and downloading of map files during runtime. So these are the examples running on different platforms, and that is what you see in the releases here, except for the SDK. So the SDK is what you'll need if you just want to work on your own app and then you want to embed OrganicMaps on it. It roughly is designed the same way how Android Home or Java Home or Android NDK Home works. So you need to declare OrganicMaps Home. Let's see here, you need to declare it wherever you downloaded that file from. And then to quickly demonstrate, there is a link here as well. Going back, there's a link for a quick demo, quick start example app. This is a smaller app than what was in the example folder in this repository. So this example app is just for quick demo. So this is the file, the example app. And if you notice here, it is the example app. When it is compressed, in its compressed state, it is about 497 megabytes. And then as you notice here, I also downloaded the SDK zip and then extracted it here in my downloads directory. So let's go inside my app. And then how do I usually work with first, upon downloading the my app, this, by the way, if you extract this zip file, you'll get this folder, my app. And then you'll want to run this script. It's what it does is it basically just finds all .sh files and makes them executable. I think what I did before was this folder, my app, was generated on a Windows machine, and then majority of the work was on a Windows machine, and then when I zipped it, all the sh files are no longer executable. There are sh apps in this project, and I think that's related to how the iOS build system works. Next is, what you'll want to do is you'll want to copy cp-rf all the files coming from the SDK assets directory into your assets folder on your own app. I actually already did this, so I'm just running it a second time just to demonstrate. So what this does is, under your assets folder, you have the maps, but I have to tell you these maps are not part of the SDK. So if you go to the SDK asset maps, it only has this file, but these are like the maps not part of the SDK. You decide how that gets into the bundle, whether it's pre-bundled or during runtime. That's the part you decide. And this is a base asset that is required. There is also the CoMaps assets, and as you can see here, it's like stuff that appears in the map, and it's usually related to how the original CoMaps app renders things. So that's part of the bundle in the SDK. Now that we have copied the assets, you'll want to run test builds. So perhaps let's start with the Mac version. So in order to do a Mac build, you are just going to do it like this. And as you can see, this is the path where I downloaded the SDK. So in order to run the Mac at least, so this is the environment variable, and this is the path where I downloaded the SDK, and then this is the Flutter command, and then this is like just to log outputs to a file, and then also on the screen as well. So let's run that. So this is the super sample quick start app, and as shown earlier, we embedded the entire Philippine map into this bundle, and so you can zoom directly into the Philippines in this distribution. Okay, so this is the demo for the quick start for Mac. Let's run on Android next. So what you want to do is, if you want to run on Android and you have connected your Android phone, and in my case I connected my Samsung Galaxy S10, so this is the code for me, and then I can then run using this command. Now it's running on my device at the moment. So let me just click on Q there. It's already running on my device. How do I show that to you? Maybe let's try and run it through Android Studio. So let's see here. Open applications, Android Studio. And you have to be careful with Android Studio because sometimes when you invoke a command like this, it opens up your previous project. So you need to close that and then open this new project. So it was under my downloads folder, my app, and then go to Android. So make sure you're on the right project. And then make sure as well that you have the correct parameter environment variable. And then from here, maybe we can, let's see here, running devices. Let's first run it. Let's see if it appears here, and then we can mirror and select plus. It's saying I select plus, and then let's connect to that. Great. And I will try to disable the Wi-Fi. As you can see here on my phone, a physical Android, you can see Metro Manila. This is the airport. This is the running through Android Studio. And then let's pause the demonstration there. Next is let's try to demonstrate running the Mac. No, we already ran on the Mac earlier. Let's run on the iPhone. I'm connecting my iPhone this time. And let's perform a build first. So Flutter build iOS, just to make sure at least it builds on the iOS. And if you're going to run this, by the way, on a physical iOS, then you might also need to fix the signing, and I'll show that as well. And you'll probably have your own Xcode or Apple developer account. The build is now done. It is 732 MB. And once again, those are the MWM files. As you can see here in assets maps, those files are huge, about 100, 200, so roughly 500 for those stuff alone. If you design your app, you'll want those maps to be downloaded at runtime and then kept in the device for offline use. Then let's try and run it using Xcode. So let's see here. The way I would do it is to open the iOS workspace. So you'll want to make sure that you've selected your own theme, stuff like that. And I think you'll want to select 15.6 on minimum deployments as well. I think that at least was documented here, 15.6. And for iOS, I think, for Mac OS, I think it should be 12. But anyway, I think that's about it. And you could probably already select the device that you want to run and then click run. Let me mirror so that you can see. I don't think I can turn off Wi-Fi in the mirror app because I think it uses Wi-Fi to mirror. So if I turn off Wi-Fi, the mirror app will fail. So as you can see here, running on the physical iPhone, you can see the map as well. So we have switched to Windows for now, but to demonstrate for Linux, Ubuntu, we have our WSL setup. So we're connected to the Windows subsystem for Linux on our Windows machine. And as you can see, we have three folders here. We're particularly interested in my app, so let's go there. And to be able to run Linux, it is just the same as before, but do note that I have bumped the version here to 1.13 as I had an issue at the last minute and I released 1.13 just to fix that. So you will need your SDK. As you notice, the SDK is 1.12, but it actually just works with 1.12. But if the SDK for 1.13 finish this build, you may use that as well. Of course, by the time you watch this video, it is best that you refer to the documentation and use always the latest version there is available. So in under my app, 1.13 here, and then you can just go and within there run the command. As you notice, it is now running and it is being rendered here. The only issue with Linux for now is that there is actually two rendering mechanisms. Initially, I was working on Ubuntu on Hyper-V VM on top of Windows, and then later I switched to WSL. As it turns out, rendering at GPU level on these different environments requires different techniques. I've been able to make the rendering work on WSL, but it is not as stable as, like, for example, Windows or Mac, especially when resizing. So there's still some issues on the Linux side. The whole point, though, is that it works. You can use your mouse scroll wheel or double click to zoom in. So this is for the Linux builds. So now we are on Windows PowerShell for Visual Studio. What we want to do this time is to run on Windows. So we just downloaded my app once again, and we also have a path to the SDK here. See, and we will run using Flutter. Flutter for Windows is much more stable in resizing. So you can zoom in, zoom out. So okay. So you're just like looking at a very large vector image here in this case, and this is all running offline. Entering Q to stop it. In addition, you can also go to the build directory. If you go to Windows and you can go to you can create a build directory here, and within the build directory, you can issue the command, and this will like build a Visual Studio setup. Let's see what's inside here. So we have a solution file. So you can just start that solution file. Of course, you probably already have Visual Studio open so that you can build. I mean, you have Visual Studio installed so that you can build on Windows. Then you can build a solution from here. And if you need more advanced uh, tinkering on Windows, you can also use this, especially for debugging, profiling, etc. I will admit my Linux setup is not the best yet at the moment, so hopefully we can work on that. Some get the appropriate hardware to really work on that, and the ARM 64 for Linux as well, and ARM 64 for Windows. Would be interesting to really check compatibility. If anyone interested to work on this project, please don't hesitate to coordinate with me on GitHub or in the comments below. Thank you.